Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Friday get together with myself and Siobhan. I'm Leslyn Keith, and I'm with the Lipedema Project and Lipedema Simplified. And Siobhan is our research specialist who, and just as a one topic I'd love to talk about today is self-care, because Siobhan just took a couple of weeks off and said, I'm on vacation. And it was taking care of yourself. So, Siobhan, um, did it work? Are you refreshed? Was that a good time?
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because I had a lymphatic session before my break, and then I actually took a break from lymphatic sessions during the break, and
Interesting.
then a check in after, because that's another stressor for me. I have to get up early in the morning and go over there
Yes.
and all that stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So I actually had a before and after comparison. And before I went on my semi vacation, she said, it's like your lymphatics are really wound up, like they're really stressed out. Things were not flowing very easily.
Uh-huh.
Even like we weren't actually able to do very much because of that. And then after, she was like, oh, this is so much better. You feel so relaxed. Things are just flowing and moving. So definitely worked in terms of my lymphatic system. Over the break, I found that my creative drive was coming back. So it's like, oh, I want to write this post. I want to write that post. I want to do this knitting project, that knitting project. I actually started working on a shirt that I'm designing.
Okay.
So this is in
There
the
we go.
works.
Yes. Look at that.
It's a very basic design, but it's
Uh-huh.
using up linen I've had for probably literally about 10 years, and it's
Uh-huh.
just been sitting, and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to do something with this. So it was very refreshing. I call it a semi vacation because I was still doing my 9 to 5, but it's like I had no obligations before 9 and no obligations after 5, which for me is a
Uh-huh.
vacation.
Yes.
And it was
Yes.
really good. I would highly recommend, just
Yes.
if you can, take some time to relax, even if it's within that of just, I'm not doing anything else outside of work. Don't text me, don't call me unless it's an emergency.
Yes.
And even then,
Yeah.
try not to.
Yes, right, right. I mean, and I think it gets back to that self-care is not selfish. You know,
Mm-hmm.
how can you be there for your family, friends, loved ones if you're not taking care of yourself? And that's what you did the last couple of weeks. So well done. And I see that Sing It has chimed in Chicago. Um, saw you working on that during the Amy hour. I'm not sure what that is, Siobhan. Are you? Do you know what that is?
Uh, I feel like I should, but yes, I often work on it during live streams and all
Oh
sorts of stuff.
yes, 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 yes.
So
Oh,
you'll
oh.
often see me knitting in the background.
You know, when you
Um,
you did the Amber O'Hearn's
mm,
sleep webinar, and I saw you with a project that you're
yeah,
working on during that. Maybe that's what she's talking about.
very possibly, yeah. It helps me concentrate because I found weirdly like the more mentally healthy I've gotten, the more difficult it is just to like veg out and watch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I often have to keep my hands busy so I can pay attention to what's actually being said.
Yeah, and
Ah, it was Amber.
it was
Sing It did
Amber. Yes,
confirm.
yes, and and Amber's presentation about sleep and satiety was actually part of our heart to heart event that we had in April. That was something, and we have some more stuff coming up that is kind of all part of that heart to heart event. But I wanted to let everybody know that this wonderful event, we had fantastic speakers and all kinds of great discussions. The replays are available. So if you did not go, or you did not get a premium access, then you can get these replays and you can have that entire conference. And actually, it was supposed to end today, but we are going to keep it open through the weekend. So you will see a link below. Click on that, and you can get the replays. Highly recommend it. You don't want to miss what we did at that event.
Yeah, we covered a lot. And Amber's post-event webinar tied into it really nicely, because when we're talking about the holistic approach, we are talking about things like sleep and
Yes.
sleep health. But
Yes.
like, I've seen it become more common over like the past 5 years or so, maybe 10 years, to talk about things like sleep hygiene, like turning off screens, avoiding blue lights, all this stuff before bedtime, which I do think is important. But one thing that people don't realize is that metabolism and energy availability can actually impact sleep and why that happens. So it was a really great discussion. There was some geeking out going on, but we did tie it back to the practical and troubleshooting things and kind of what are the signs that we look for, a few case examples of people that we know who've had experience with it. So it was really great, and I would highly recommend checking that out.
Yes, yes. And I know I was taking notes furiously because a couple things that she said also related back to lymphatic functioning. Well, and I'm going, oh, cool. And so there's things I need to look up and follow some threads on. So just a fabulous presentation. And we hope to do more with Amber. She's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. Also,
so thank you all that are posting on here. Tamara and Marilee, who's knitting right now.
Good. Let us know what you're working on.
Yes. Thanks for posting. If you guys have any questions or comments, or as Gail loves to say, send us some love. So be sure and post in there. We like to know that people are out there and hanging out with us as we get together. As
also,
yes.
Just briefly, this doesn't have to do with lipedema, but it kind of does have to do with lipedema, so I want to mention it. An article from Nina Teicholz just came out talking about the women in the carnivore space. There have been a few different news articles and different publications talking about how carnivore is all male-dominated, blah, blah, blah. But if you actually look into the history of carnivore diets, there's actually a lot of really prominent women. Amber O'Hearn is one of them, Kelly Hogan, Dana Carpenter. There's a few different ones. So Nina Teicholz reached out to them, talked about why they do it. And the reason that this ties back to lipedema is because lipedema is obviously something that impacts almost exclusively women. And we do know quite a few people in the lipedema space who are using carnivore for health reasons, for lipedema management, for mental health management, along with lipedema. So I wanted to mention that because sometimes there can be like, oh, I'm doing carnivore for lipedema or whatever it is. Maybe family members have seen those other articles and gotten a weird impression of what it is and what it's for and why people do it. So I would highly recommend checking out that Substack post. The title of it is in response to those other articles, in case you're wondering. But yeah, go give that a read. It gives some really cool history on carnivore diets and is a nice like entry point. And Amber was interviewed for that as well.
Excellent. Now, for me, I was not even aware of what Substack is. if there's other people like me out there who would like to find this article you're talking about, how would we search for it?
Yeah, so I did put the link in the chat, so people should be able to go to it there. Basically what Substack is it's kind of like a article hosting thing that is done independently. So Gary Taubes and Nina Teicholz have one called Unsettled Science. They talk about nutrition updates and different studies that come out and different ways of viewing nutrition science and stuff like that. I'm actually subscribed to them. And then that's where they put this. So you can follow them on there and then you'll see their updates through your email, or you can just visit their Substack. They talk about tons of cool stuff and I really like both of them. So it's a good, like, if you want to cleanse yourself of all of the annoying things that come out of the nutrition space, it's a good read.
Yes. And it sounds to me kind of like Reddit, that kind of the subreddits that they have. I don't know. And these other people use these things and I hear about them, but I have no idea what they are.
Yeah.
So, but I did, I did click on that link that you provided, Siobhan, and it did take me right to that post. So be sure and Sing It said she just clicked on it as well. So yes, thank you for giving us that resource. Wonderful. So I would just love, since we're on that little topic of self-care and maybe taking a little bit of maybe even a stay-home vacation or something, but what have you done for your self-care lately? What has really worked for you? And I'm looking at mostly, what are you doing to de-stress? Because sometimes it can be, as Siobhan was saying, going for her regular MLD appointment, that can be stressful. So sometimes just all of the things you need to do for your self-care can be stressful. So how do you guys deal with that? What do you do to de-stress? How are you taking care of yourself? We'd love to see those posts. Yeah.
One thing that I've actually done over the past few months is I actually signed up for a TPC who primarily focuses on care of chronic conditions. So it's almost like now I have a personal assistant for all of the stuff that I deal with in terms of trying to build muscle and get into resistance training and staying on top of a therapeutic ketogenic diet for depression. And whenever I travel and like all of this other stuff that I'm trying to do, we talk basically often several times a week and sometimes daily, just checking in. Hey, I did this thing today. Hey, we tried this, coming up with game plans. And it's helped me a lot stay on top of my self-care because it's like I have 10 billion things to think about. And lipedema is a huge chunk, and I have tried for that and like you guys, but I have other stuff that I'm dealing with, and I found that really helpful just to kind of organize. And sometimes I'll even be like, hey, can you remind me to use my pump because I keep forgetting. Just like, sure, I'll text you on it. So that has been really helpful just to have a check-in.
Yeah. I think that's one reason why whenever we do a short course, we call them a coaching special interest group. We have one going on right now. Whenever we do that, one of the days, one day is the education and discussion and stuff like that. And the other day is just a check-in. How is it going? What have you tried? What worked? What didn't work? What were your challenges? And that's only once a week, and you're able to do this more often, Siobhan. That's a really nice support.
Yeah, and I find the CSIGs and stuff really helpful, and even like the events, because like connecting with the community here and going to those just really focused in the coaching special interest groups, or even just like the artsy fartsy that we have coming up this Sunday, the Inspiration Corner. Those are really helpful for me too, for lipedema specifically. And it's just kind of like knowing what resources are out there and then implementing them in a way that's going to work for me is still a process. And I think it's going to continue to be a process. It's just like learning a language. Like, okay, this worked for a little bit. Now I've got to change it up a little. Oh, look at this. There's this new resource. Let's try that.
Yes. And I'm looking at what people have posted. Marilee says, I'm knitting a drops pattern called Rose Water. Top out of bamboo cotton DK yarn. I'm sure you understand this lingo.
Yes. So she's knitting a shirt or a top, a sweater, something like that, out of bamboo in a thicker yarn. And drops, I do know of. I haven't done any of their patterns yet, but I should check them out. I've heard good things about them.
Yeah. And Tamara says, I have a lot of fun things to do this week and next, and I decided I couldn't do it all, even if it is fun. Yes. So sometimes even fun stuff can be stressful. I did get a call today that my pump will be delivered next week. That could be a wonderful de-stress time, right? It's just because you can't do anything else, so you slide into your pump and you just
I'll knit while in my pump. And that is true. I find resistance training really fun, but if I do like the absolute max that I can do, it is way too overwhelming and I'll be like too wiped out to do anything else. So I've taken what I can do and I cut it in half for each session, and it's working. Like I've been able to sustain it. And that was actually the specialist idea. Like, why don't you just do half? It's like, why don't I? What a good question. Let's try that.
Well, that is actually one of the pointers or one of the guidelines that Dr. Raymond Perrin gave us when we were at his workshop. He called it the 50% rule.
Yeah.
Figure out what you can do and then cut it in half and do just half of it. And that's exactly what you did. I'm glad that worked for you.
Yeah.
Marcia said, help my stress is
Diamond
diamond
painting.
painting.
Yeah, it's like where you take little rhinestone gems and you stick them like onto a painting or a picture, and it can create like coasters or just big paintings, stuff like that. It's really pretty.
Oh, it almost sounds like batik or something like that. That's really nice. And Sing It says, I've picked my crocheting up again. Um, I'm not sure I'm reading this right. Many babies.
Many babies. So there were a lot of people who had babies at her job, and she forgot how crocheting calms her down and keeps her hands away from food.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. You're doing something with your hands. Yes. And it's creative. It's a creative outlet, but it's also keeping you occupied. Yeah. That's a great strategy. And Tamara, I just got back from a craft club. So
Very
relaxing.
Nice. So many crafters in the chat right now.
Yeah. And Beth says a pump can stress me out too, even though it feels great. It takes a lot of time away from other things. Right.
Yeah.
I have this new incline table that I'm using. You know, you kind of get a little bit in this reverse gravity and it kind of just really stretches out your spine. And it feels really good. But while I'm laying in it, I'm going, gosh, I can't wait to get back to such and such. I mean, just to lay there. And so it's hard to do it as much as I want to do it because you're sitting there going, just twiddling your thumbs. Okay, how much longer? So sometimes those self-care things are hard to do. But I like how, as Beth, think of what Siobhan was saying, that she's doing other things while she's in her pump. So a pump feels great. It's a good self-care thing. But what can you do if the pumps is on your lower body? You have your hands free to do some other stuff. You can work on your computer. You can be knitting, making phone calls. So see that you can feel like you're still keeping your mind engaged and not doing. Other people would like to do their meditation while they're pumping. That can be a good thing too. I find it difficult to do meditation.
Me too. But there were plenty of people at the events who were using their pump at the event.
Oh,
yes.
Like,
sorry, camera off. I'm in my pump right now. It's like, you go for it. Awesome.
Yeah. And that was a great, doing something while you're at this event, getting all this fantastic information, talking and chatting with other people while you're pumping. Wow, what a fantastic combination. Let's see. Wilma says she's in Shetland, and this two past weeks I've been suffering with red swollen ankles up to my calves, bright red burning. Kind of, you're saying prickly heat rash. I also wonder about infection, red, hot, swollen. These are some of the cardinal signs of infection, Wilma. So I would recommend going to urgent care and having them eyeball it. I'd rather go there on a false alarm and maybe it is a heat rash. I'd rather that be the case than wait and delay it. And then it is an infection and then it progresses because you haven't addressed it. So be careful with that. Thank you guys for posting lots of stuff. We have someone who says, does fasting have a positive effect on lipedema? Siobhan, what's your opinion on that?
So it may depend on the person, but at this point, I know quite a few people. I'm one of them who does find that even if they're already on a ketogenic diet, that fasting or fat fasting, which is basically just water fasting and then you add fat if you don't have enough of your own to get through it comfortably, does have additional benefits. So I found like it can help reduce some of the bound fluid in my legs, particularly at the lower legs. So they get more empty, which is a good thing. And then also just generally reducing swelling and things like that. However, I don't know it would work in everybody. And some people, especially if you're coming from like a more carb-centric diet, it may be a little bit more difficult to get into it because you're switching metabolisms at that point from carb-based to fat-based. Yes. So for that, I would recommend reaching out to somebody like, let's see, the fasting method has a lot of great resources. Our keto coach, Carrie Reedy, may have some thoughts on fasting. She can be a good consult to kind of personalize it for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is, I would always want to caution people to pay attention to how they're feeling during the fast. So regardless of how much mass your body has, with lipedema, it does complicate accessing your own fat. So when you're fasting, are you getting progressively hungrier? Are you having difficulty sleeping? Which goes to Amber's presentation again.
Yes.
Is it disrupting your menstrual cycle if you're still menstruating? Are you feeling cold, progressively more tired? There's lots of things to look at. And if that is the case, which is what I was running into, I added fat into my fasts. So I stay in that deeply ketogenic state, but I'm adding in energy for my body to use because I just don't have enough at this point. There are also other things beyond lipedema that may impair access to fat too. That's a whole other thing. We can probably go into it someday. But the last thing is, if you're on medications, so psychiatric medications, blood pressure medications, or blood sugar medications, you need to be medically supervised. The end, like in terms of that. And even if you're not, I would recommend having a check-in buddy who is a doctor, who you can just make sure someone is keeping an eye on you and that everything's feeling good and it's going well. And so that you can reach out to them if you have questions or concerns or anything like that.
Yeah. So and to recap, if you are not on a carb restricted diet and you're going to try fasting, careful, do it carefully. And if you are new to fasting, maybe you have been using carb restriction, but you've never done fasting anymore, use caution as well. If you can have people monitor you, great. If you're not, pay attention to how you're feeling. And the real quick fix is, if you're not feeling well, eat. So
that's the thing.
End your fast.
Yeah, because you can always fast on a different day if there's anything even slightly off.
Right.
She's like, all right, we're ending this here. We can revisit it another time once we kind of evaluated what happened here. But it is never wrong to end a fast.
Right.
Because that is the safest option. And if you're going to end the fast, try and have your first meal be very, very low carb, because going from no food to high carb food can cause electrolyte fluctuation, basically, that can be problematic.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I think it's important for people to know that if you go into it that I want to fast for X number of hours, and then you have to end your fast before those hours, you are not a failure. You were actually wise because you paid attention to what your body was telling you. So, so it is, you have to always be flexible, even though you had a certain goal, you had a certain plan, but you had to pivot and do something else. It's okay. Be safe, be cautious. Yeah, very good. And there was another question about cramping. I'm going to go back up because someone asked, okay, I have a cramp in my side. Do you get cramps with lymphedema? This says lymphedema. And a lot of times, it's hard to say if what you're experiencing is actually a what we call a muscle cramp. Typically, that's going to be in an area of a lot of muscle, and in your side, in your trunk, it may not actually be a muscle cramp that's happening there, because muscle cramps are usually an electrolyte problem, or it is a lack of blood flow problem, and your muscle contracts and hoping that when it releases that contraction, we get a big amount of blood going through there. So, I'm not sure if what you're actually experiencing is a cramp, and I would not say that cramps are not typically part of the symptoms of lipedema, but
like maybe if you're doing a treatment that's moving fluid really fast, because that can cause electrolytes to also move really fast out. Or if you're coming down from a swelling episode, same thing there. For me, because I'm on a really low carb diet, sometimes I'll get like ab cramping if my electrolytes are really low.
That is interesting. So, and you feel like it's your abdominal muscles that are cramping.
Yeah, I can actually feel it. Like the
Okay.
muscles are actually what's tightening up.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, and we've been talking a lot about central lymphatic issues and abdominal pain that may or may not be cramps is one of the symptoms with that. So, I mean, there's just so many things that can cause abdominal pain or cramping, as Siobhan described. So it's hard to say exactly what's going on there, but not usually associated with just lipedema. That's not a common thing
And
that people experience.
with any weird pains, even if it's just suspected to be like a cramp, just checking in with your doctor and saying, "Hey, it's around this area. Have you seen that? Like, is this anything of concern?" And maybe they just say no, and it's like, okay, it's probably a cramp. But maybe not. Maybe they want to look further into something and just rule some things out. That's always a good time to touch base.
So, like, let's see. I think it is lower right is your appendix. And then maybe upper right could be gallbladder. I mean, if you tell
it's an area of a bunch of organs.
Yes, I know. There's a lot of organs there. So it helps if it is really combined to a quadrant. You can, when you go into your doctor, you can tell it is if you divide your stomach into 4 quadrants and you can say that it's upper left, lower left. Sometimes just by that area, that can help narrow it down, and your physician might be able to figure out what's going on. Low back pain is sometimes kidney stones. I mean, so there's all kinds of stuff that's happening in that area. Well, Siobhan, we have done it again. 30 minutes just flew by, or almost 30 minutes. I think that the big takeaway today is take care of yourself and don't feel guilty about taking care of yourself. And a good way to take care of yourself is to watch those replays of our excellent that we just had. So be sure to purchase those replays. And as always, we will be back again next Friday at the same time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And we look forward to hanging out with you again. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
Bye.
Bye.